So today's lesson, we will be talking about immigration again. We've been talking about that for the last couple of weeks. At the end of the day today, we want you to be able to meet this learning objective, that students will be able to describe the implications of the United States policy towards those seeking refugee or immigrant status from the Nazis during World War II, those that specifically in regards to European Jews. And explaining what the documents were and how the United States chose to handle the visa applications from those individuals. If we're looking back into some other history, after World War I, Jewish citizens were kind of praised for the outcome of the war. They were given a higher status, and then a couple of years later, everything turned around and was kind of blamed on the Jewish individuals. They lost their jobs, they had to move out of their homes, were put into different communities. And that was made even worse when Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933. And that kind of was a turning point for a lot of individuals. Those who had gotten out of countries like Hungary and Poland and found refuge in Germany were now also being kicked out of Germany and being kind of brought down upon there. At the beginning of the war, many individuals who had connections to the United States via family, people that they knew as colleagues, were able to come into the United States and get a job and become an immigrant and get through that visa application process very quickly and didn't really come into any barriers. However, once the war began, a lot of the immigration and visa status was delayed. Different things were put into place that would stop the visa process from happening for those Jewish refugees. One of the things that we want to look at is a letter. Let's see if I can find the letter. It's from Franklin D. Roosevelt when he was president, and it was with the dilemma that he had faced. And it is from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and I'm going to read that to you guys. Is one of the reasons that the refugees were kind of given that delay on their visa process. It said that establishing a haven in the United States for German refugees was extremely difficult for a variety of reasons. Among these were general questions regarding immigration to the United States. The new quota system of the 1924 U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act imposed severe restrictions on immigration based on nationality. Moreover, in 1930, Roosevelt's predecessor announced that given acute unemployment during the Depression, U.S. immigration authorities would interpret a 1917 ban on immigration of persons likely to become a charge to include persons who would otherwise be able to work, but in the conditions of the Depression were unlikely to find a job. Essentially, it was saying that they would not let in excess people to the country, otherwise it might put a hold on U.S. citizens finding a job, and then they were already suffering from a lack of jobs during the Great Depression. The U.S. State Department policies made it very difficult for refugees to obtain entry visas. We noticed this in situations like the St. Louis was a ship that was full of Jewish refugees. When they tried to cross over and come to America, they were denied from Canada, Cuba, and the United States before being sent back to Belgium, and then at that time more than 1/3 of them eventually succumbed and died at concentration camps throughout World War II. Despite the ongoing persecution of Jews in Germany, the State Department's attitude was influenced by the economic hardship and an intensified grassroots of anti-Semitism, or that hatred of Jews within the United States. And the number of entry visas was further limited by the department's inflexible applications of a restrictive immigration law passed by Congress in 1924. And beginning in 1940, the United States further limited immigration by ordering American consuls abroad to delay visa approvals on national security grounds. So they weren't turning down the visas, but under the table they're delaying it, they're losing these applications, they're not trying to, approve them, they're just trying to avoid it at all costs. So one of the first documents I want you guys to look at is going to be right over here. And this is the memo.
What is it?
All right, so we are now looking at our first primary source document. Earlier in the week, we did discuss the difference between a primary source and a secondary source. Can either of you tell me what a primary source is? Beth? Lita?
Jeez.
Lita, what would you say is a primary source?
Oh, the original something?
What would be an example of an original document?
Like a photograph or a letter.
Diary entry. You're right. So today's primary source that we're going to be looking at first is a memo, and the original title for that memo is going to be "The Memo from Assisting Secretary of State Breckinridge Long to State Department Officials, dated June 26, 1940, outlining effective ways to obstruct the granting of U.S. visas." So even in the title of this document, it is saying that they are going to obstruct the view and obstruct people from getting into the country by kind of hiding these visas. I'm going to read you guys two portions of it. You guys all have a copy in front of you. The first section we're looking at is the non-immigrants. Says that their entry to the United States can be made to depend upon prior authorization by the department. This would mean that the consuls would be divested of a section that all requests for non-immigrant visas be passed upon here. And that's for temporary visas or a transit travel visa. It is quite feasible and can be done instantly. It will permit the department to effectively control the immigration of persons in this category, and private instruction can be given the visa division as to nationalities or specific individuals who should be excluded. This must be done for a universal application. In regards to the immigrants, it says that we can delay and effectively stop for a temporary period of indefinite length the number of immigrants into the United States. We could do this by simply advising our consuls to put every obstacle in the way and require additional evidence, and to resort to various administrative devices which would postpone and postpone and postpone the granting of the visas. However, this could only be temporary. In order to make it more definite, it would have to be done by suspension of the rules under the law by the issuance of a proclamation of emergency, which I take it we are not yet ready to proclaim. Can anybody tell me what the document was telling us? What was the document trying to explain for those who are non-immigrants?
That they can still come.
That they can still come.
They can still come here, and it'd be easy for them to get here.
It would be easy. So for the non-immigrant portion, it's saying that those who want to come for a vacation and have an end date to their travels, like a ticket booked home on a ship, would be able to come into the United States and get that travel visa. Or those traveling through the country, whether it be a stop in the United States in different ports and going to different ones, traveling through from Canada to Mexico, vice versa, and things like that. That's saying that it would be okay. It's also saying that even for some with certain nationalities or certain individuals, even if they applied for that travel visa, they would be denied. And that's what the end part of that was saying. What about the immigrant section? Anybody explain that?
Well, that's for people that want to permanently come here and live, and they didn't want anybody to come here and permanently live.
Right.
They wanted to just stop everybody.
I think one of the most interesting lines of that is on kind of right at the top underneath immigrants, where it says we can delay and effectively stop for a temporary period of indefinite length. So a temporary period, but for as long as necessary, which was kind of interesting to read. I also have a letter from Margaret E. Jones. She was an American Quaker that represented the European Jews. And she wrote a letter in response to this. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to kind of read that over, and then we can discuss what her opinions were. All right, so we've had a couple of minutes to look that over. Can anybody explain what that letter was saying, what Margaret's opinions were on what the State Department was doing in terms of kind of denying and hiding these visas from people that were trying to seek, political asylum.
Well, she didn't like it, and she wanted to know where this came from. It seems. She just kind of was asking a lot of questions on what's going on, who ordered this, is this the council, the Congress, or whatever. And she found out about, just how difficult it is to get visas,
right,
and things too, and reuniting people that have come over here before.
And we actually have a document that's in front of you guys as well, and this is part of the visa document. It would actually be a multi-page pamphlet of information that Jewish refugees had to fill out, and this is for the refugees too. Normally those that are immigrants would have more of this paperwork, but they were trying just to deny it. And one of the things that was in Margaret's letter is she's saying all of the obstacles that these individuals had to overcome. They had to have people be character witnesses for them. They had to have letters from those in law enforcement in their home countries. All of these obstacles to get in the way. They had to know their past relatives for many years, know if anybody had any other political affiliations, what they were letting into the country, military status, financial money. And we've looked at the visas for those coming into Ellis Island even when that process sort of started, and we know how difficult that was. It could take a couple of days to get through that process. If you had a cough, you might not get in. This was intensified quite a bit just to kind of deny that process, with only a handful, maybe 5 immigrants coming through every couple of weeks, or refugees being admitted into the country. Do you guys think that you'd be able to fill out that visa with all the necessary details?
No.
Imagine the pressure of being in a conference room, being in a small room with all of these State Department individuals questioning you and asking you questions over and over again, and then just kind of wasting time so that you would eventually be in the country for about a week and then sent back. You're not getting anywhere, you're just kind of wasting your time before being sent back where you came from. It's kind of a sad experience. If we're looking at this and we're looking at these refugees not being let into the country, kind of as we wrap up our lesson today, does this remind you of any other situation kind of in modern times? Any refugees not being let into different countries, or any types of situations like the Holocaust?
Yeah, sure it does.
What kind of situation? Do you know the name?
The Syrians,
Right.
refugees right now.
So the Syrian refugees are kind of facing that same problem. You see countries like Greece getting influx of these refugees and them having to turn them away because they've already taken so many. But then you look at the United States that keeps kind of coming up with more reasons and barricades to accepting them. So that's something that we're going to look at later on too, is refugee crisis and how they kind of get into the United States and the process that we have for that and why we have that process. So that's something that we're going to look into. But now we've discussed the immigration process. This is at the end of our immigration unit, seeing all the good things that have happened through immigration, the process that immigrants have had to come through. And then we kind of got to this dead end point, which hurt our country, and it hurt a lot of individuals who were trying to seek asylum.